All right, welcome everyone to the interdisciplinary speaker series on the ethics of argumentation. Today we have the great pleasure of having Dr. Jakub Pruś here with us, who's from the I failed.
Ignatianum University in Krakow.
Thank you. I like for everyone who sees the recording, I practiced and I did it right twice during practicing. And he's a logician and argumentation theorist, and he has written some incredibly good papers on the principle of charity and developed a debate type on this basis. And today he's going to talk to us about debating with, not against, the Cracovian debate as a model for cooperative argumentation. Take it away, Jakub. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Welcome, everyone. So I plan to give you a brief idea of what the debate format that we have created is about. And I think it will take me around 40 minutes, and then you can, raise your objections or make your comments. So let's start with sharing. So, are you able to see my screen? Yes, you are. And can you see if yeah, okay. Right, so let me just make you smile. Kat, do you consent to be here in the corner? Or should I move you somewhere there? Or okay. So yeah, debating with, not against, and I think some of you may already have heard about Cracovian debate, most likely on the last ECA conference. But for those of you who or during the workshop on the Arguing for Sport that took place several months ago at the University of Lethbridge, but hopefully some of you did not hear about this. So here is the debate, and I think the two papers that describe the best what I'm going to say here today are these two. One is about the Cracovian debate, and the other is about the dialectical principle of charity, both published within last several years. So let's start with the Cracovian debate, shall we? There are three features of the Cracovian debate, and I will limit my explanation what the Cracovian debate is to these 3 points, and then I will just give you a very brief idea what are the experiments that we are currently running to test some hypotheses about the Cracovian debate. So the first, and I think the most important feature is the following: that's the debate format that supports the cognitive gain. That's the score that everyone tries to get. The other is that discussion is it requires the principle of charity. It's enforced by the dynamics, and then the third one is the logical order that supports the cognitive gain. So I think the most important and the most characteristic, distinctive feature is the first one, as you will see, and I think spend the most of time explaining the first feature. So we should start with something what's called the war metaphor, and I think you may already have heard about this from many different authors commenting or describing the argument, the discussion. So let's start with this metaphor. You may see that people perceive argument, or we may focus on discussion, as a war fight. And there are several, you can observe that on the several levels. Firstly, you may have a look at the language that we use to describe the discussion. And here is here is Lakoff and Johnson and the very famous book, Metaphors We Live By. So we have indefensible claims, we attack, we defend, we criticize on target, or you may also say that you demolished or destroyed, smashed the argument or the opponent itself. So this is the metaphor we have behind the argument. And we know that from somewhere else that for any more complex action we take, we need some kind of metaphor. And it's, well, I don't expect that this is something surprising to anyone who studies argumentation. And yeah, here is even, this is taken from the training material for the teachers teaching the students how to debate. I think it's in German, but yeah, have a look at this one. A discussion is it's not a tea party, it's a boxing match. One side wins, the other loses. And there is no draw. Someone needs to win and someone needs to lose. And you may ask, what's wrong with this metaphor? What's wrong? I have certain belief, and my friend, colleague, opponent has a different belief, and we start to discuss our beliefs. So we start to fight, and who wins is right. Right? So there are several problems with this metaphor, and I will try to show you, following Lakoff and Johnson also, that we need, sorry, I need to make a cut here. We need another metaphor, and we may use the metaphor of dancing. That was also proposed by Lakoff and Johnson over 46 years ago. And yeah, I think you may know this guy. So just let me know if you are able to. I hope you will able to. It's a 1 minute thought experiment. I will provide you with some more reasons after that, explaining what's wrong with the war metaphor. But I think Dan Cohen does it far better than I do. So,
if argument is war,
are you able to hear that video? Yes. Okay. Okay.
If argument is war, then there's an implicit equation of learning with losing. And let me explain what I mean. Suppose you and I have an argument. You believe a proposition, P, and I don't. And I say, well, why do you believe P? And you give me your reasons. And I object to say, well, what about? And you answer my objection. And I have a question. Well, what do you mean? How does it apply over here? And you answer my question. Now, suppose at the end of the day, I've objected, I've questioned, I've raised all sorts of counter considerations. And in every case, you've responded to my satisfaction. And so at the end of the day, I say, you know what? I guess you're right. P. So I have a new belief. And it's not just any belief, but it's a well-articulated, examined, it's a battle-tested belief. Great cognitive gain. Okay, who won that argument? Well, the war metaphor seems to force us into saying, you won, even though I'm the only one who made any cognitive gain. What did you gain cognitively from convincing me? Sure, you got some pleasure out of it. Maybe your ego stroked. Maybe you get some professional status in the field. This guy's a good arguer. But cognitively now, just from cognitive point of view, who was the winner? The war metaphor forces us into thinking that you're the winner and I lost, even though I gained. And there's something wrong with that picture. And that's the picture I really want to change if we can.
Okay. So that was Dan Cohen, and I hope that this thought experiment will stay with us for some time, because it shows the I think the most important mechanism behind the war metaphor, like that we struggle, we desire to be a winner because it's a fight. Nobody wants to lose the fight, and we will do whatever we can to win, even though some things we do are like not allowed. And you may think, well, maybe some other people do that, but I don't, right? So, I don't believe that's truly right. Like, think about some like argument you had with like on the very like hot topic, like the topic that was like very engaging for you and your opponent, and think about whether you were really fond of saying, well, you're right, I was wrong. So that's the thought experiment, but obviously I can oh yeah, and I need to make a huge disclaimer, because I realize that some of you probably have some experience with debating, and most likely this is a good experience, and I really don't doubt that. I really don't want to get rid of debate formats like Ethics Bowl, Oxford debate, or British parliamentary debate, national parliamentary debate. Like there is plenty of research proving the positives of debating, but also we have some research showing some problems with this kind of debating, with debating as fighting. So obviously you have more polarization and more uncharitability. Like, we are not very charitable towards one another when we are fighting, because like, well, you want to win. So if somebody leaves you a room to like criticize the argument, you just make use of that, won't you? But the other, I think, more important feature is this one. So we have some social experiments proving that if you compare the results the results between two different groups, and in one group people were cooperating, and the other they were like trying to win over one another, the results were better in the groups that were cooperating with one another. And that's something that's really, really promising for the Cracovian debate, especially for proving some of the good results of that. And obviously, yeah, you may find more and more disadvantages of this kind of debating. For example, it teaches you to listen, but listen not to understand, but to criticize. So just think about the discussion you had, and when you were really, really disagreeing with your opponent, and then you may ask yourself, how did you listen to your opponent? Did you listen to understand in the best possible sense of what he or she is saying, or were you listening in order to like formulate a criticism towards what he or she is saying? And I will leave you with that question. And obviously, the last thing is I think it's very important, especially in democratic societies, because in the competitive debating, so those formats I mentioned, Oxford debate, parliamentary debate, ethics bowl, you are not allowed to say, you're right, I was wrong. You are not allowed to withdraw your argument or your position. You need to defend it, because otherwise you will lose. That's the rule of the game, right? So these are like some problems. And since I'm talking to people studying argumentation, you may also formulate another problem with war metaphor or with competitive debating. That's you may also say that there are several logical fallacies that are driven, which are encouraged by this war metaphor. Yeah. So, for example, think about what you may say, like, okay, think about the strawman. Strawman, like distorting your opponent's view in order to what? Why do we make a strawman fallacy? Think about it for a minute. Why do we do that? Or why do people do that? That's the interesting thought, isn't it? Because we create a strawman, we attack distorted view because we really want to win, don't we? We really want to win. We want to have a, be a glorious, to have a glorious victory. So we fight with the distorted view, distorted argument. Or think about the fallacy of, let's say, red herring fallacy or ad hoc rescue. Let's take these two. Why do we flee from the topic that we are discussing? Why do we create a red herring fallacy? Because we are afraid of losing, don't we? And the same, think about why do we create this ad hoc rescue, or you may also call it moving a goalpost. Why do we do that? Because we are afraid of saying you're right or I was wrong. That's the another consequence of argument, of thinking about the argument as a fight. You may also think about personal attacks, abusive ad hominem arguments, or not even arguments, just personal attacks. These are caused by the hostility towards the opponent, and the hostility occurs when we fight. So we have several reasons. Think about this thought experiment, discussing as fighting and doing whatever you can in order to win, and like encouraging everyone to be a winner, not a loser, even though the loser is the one that gets more cognitively. Think about some studies, linguistic studies or social studies about showing the difference between cooperating and competing, and think about this logical fallacy. So it shows us that there is something wrong with debating or discussing as fighting. And that's why we have created a cooperative debate format. There were some ideas of creating such debates. And I think the tradition that we are most rooted in is the medieval tradition of disputatio. It's like from the 14th century in Europe, we have this tradition of the monks or scholars debating some things in philosophy or theology or in law. And I think this is the tradition that we would like to link to a Cracovian debate. So it's not Roman suasoria, not British political clubs, but medieval disputationes. So yeah, but still you may ask, okay, you want people, participants, to cooperate, but if you take out the winner, you need some kind of dynamic. You need to provide the participants with some kind of motivation, especially if they are students, right, on your classes. So this is what we have created, and I think this is the most distinguished, the most characteristic feature of the Cracovian debate is the scoring. So there are no winners and losers at the end of the debate, like in the classical sense. We do not announce that this team was better than the other, but we start before the debate starts. We provide everyone, participants and the audience, with the short form with just one question, and the question is, what's your opinion on the motion, on the topic that we are debating? And we provide everyone with 3 minutes, and everyone is just filling the form. They may use their mobile phones, or if you like, you can print the paper sheets, and they just answer this question. And the first form is simply focused on making people think once again about what are the reasons that they are for or against. Because, and that's the important thing I need to mention, in the Cracovian debate, the participants are debating their beliefs, their real, true beliefs. So we don't pick sides randomly as you do in different formats. But first you ask who agrees that something, and those who agree create one team, and those who don't agree create the other team, and they prepare. They have some time for prepare. It may be 30 minutes or one day, or 1 week, whatever. And then we have the debate. So before the debate starts, we have this first form, and then the debate starts. I will get back to this within a minute, but after the debate, we have another form, and the other form is this: did you learn anything significant? New argument? Did you change your view on the subject? Did you change the level of your certainty on the topic was changed? If yes, then describe what changed. So you may see, basically, this is the question about the cognitive gain. And the cognitive gain is basically, I think there are 5 cognitive gains. We always leave room for the option other, but most of the cognitive gain is this. So you may refute the argument that you previously accepted. You may learn a new argument for or against your initial position. You may change the level of certainty, or you may change your opinion entirely. This one happens not very often, and it's nothing surprising, but I have some data that I will provide you at the end of this talk. But this is the most unusual, and we know from psychology that changing opinion is something that happens in time. So we don't expect that people will change opinion like within 30 minutes. And then you have some room to describe what did you learn specifically. And so this is the form before and after. And once the debate is, or the participants and the audience ends filling the forms, we have certain score, certain percentage, like let's say 50, 80, 20 percentage. This is the number is the number of people who were either participating in the debate or listening to the debate, the number of people who got some cognitive gain. And here we go back to the metaphor of dancing by Lakoff and Johnson, because here we may frame the Cracovian debate as dancing. So when you dance, you do different things. You somehow oppose one another. Just think about waltz, for example. Okay, you do different things, but you cooperate because you want to have a good dance, have some pleasure from it, but also to have a good effect. If some people are watching you, you want them to like enjoy looking at you dancing. So you have certain percentage, and these dynamic, this provides people with the goal that helps them to cooperate. And maybe I should mention that we modeled this debate in 2020, so 6 years ago, and we started to do some pilot research on how it works. And we aimed specifically for high school students and undergraduate students. So I think we have tested around 350 people, just to make sure that this debate works. And so it did work. So yeah, that's it. That's the score, and that's the most important feature. The remaining two, dialectical principle of charity, and here we go back to the Middle Ages, especially to the disputationes. Once someone asked me, I think it was in the radio, what's your favorite logical fallacy? And I don't know how some logical fallacies can be your favorite, but I'm pretty sure what's the most often logical fallacy, and obviously that's the strawman. That's my opinion. I don't have any data supporting this, but the one of the most common fallacies that we may meet, especially in social media, is a strawman. So basically, the tradition of Cracovian debate is disputationes and this dialectical principle of charity, which basically is follows from this Middle Ages rule for disputatio. And this rule, the golden, we may name it as a golden rule of disputationes, was this: you are not allowed to criticize the other side until you repeat with your own words what your opponent said. And now think about this. So in Middle Ages, when scholars were debating with one another, before the criticism, they needed to paraphrase the opponent's argument to the point that the author of the argument approved that this is what I meant. And only then they were allowed to proceed with criticism. Now, you may now think about how social media or how our TV debates or political debates in the telly would look like if we still would follow this rule. So I'm pretty sure that we like 3/4 of the arguments we have in social media would disappear because people would like understand one another, and there would be no need for the further argumentation. So the dialectical principle charity in the nutshell is this: like someone says something and then you just try to interpret this in the best possible sense. But if it doesn't work, you need to ask this feedback question, or you need to just paraphrase. Did you say that? And here you paraphrase the argument. We may skip the further steps because these will be included in the dynamic of the debate. But the most important thing is this feedback question. So in the Cracovian debate, people are required to paraphrase themselves or paraphrase the other party, the other side, before they criticize the argument. And that's it. So that's the second feature of the Cracovian debate. And the third one is basically this. We ask both proposition and opposition, team that supports the motion, the resolution, and team that is against the motion. We ask them to prepare 3 arguments each, 3 arguments for opposition and 3 arguments against the motion for opposition. And each argument is presented separately. So we start with proposition, and proposition presents the first argument. And this argument is paraphrased, then is clarified by the proposition, and obviously then is criticized, and then we have a reply. Reply may also be an improvement of the argument. So when you see that the criticism is accurate and it really undermines your argument, you may either withdraw it or you may improve your argument. And like there is no penalty for this, because we still cooperate to increase the cognitive gain. So nobody's expecting that someone will stick to his or her guns. And the same happens with the argument of the opposition. Someone presents, then there you have paraphrase, clarification, criticism, and some reply. And this procedure repeats 3 times. So each of the 3 arguments of proposition goes that way, and each of the arguments of the opposition goes that way. And that's the debate between the parties. If you have some time, if you organize that debate, you may then ask the audience for the questions. And that's also something which needs to be brought. Each of the members of the audience may be a fact checker. So we suppose that everyone has, their mobile phones, and they may check what was said was true. And so everyone may be a fact checker and may verify some information. And then after the debate, after these 3 arguments for and 3 arguments against, the audience may ask questions about anything, and they may also bring some information that undermines some of the information that was cited in the debate. So when the questions ends, we fill the form, and then we have some results of the people who reported the cognitive gain. And that's the score. And everyone wants to have, the biggest possible score. So that dynamics is somehow fosters this cooperation between the parties and focusing on the arguments, the best arguments, not on someone's own personal, glory as a good debater. So you may ask now, okay, that's really cool, Jacob. Fine, but you can't do that for really deep disagreements. You can't have a cooperative debating on things like abortion or I don't know, some legislation or voting laws, whatever. So have a look at this one. I just, from the pilot that we had between 2021 and 2024, these are some most controversial topics, motions that we debated. And as you may see, these are really, really like hard topics. Like you have eating meat is morally wrong, or we should not accept immigrants from Belarus, Ukraine. Yeah, homosexual and heterosexual love are equally valuable, or physical punishment of children should be illegal. Hate speech should be banned. All religions should lead to the same God. Death penalty should be legalized. You have like all of those things that we fight over during the Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. You may have a cooperative debate, discussion, focus on the arguments and focus on the cognitive gain on these topics. And you may see the cognitive gain here. So it's like it's rather high. Okay, so yeah, so only some data from the research we already did and we are currently doing. So, for example, from one of the pilots we had, you may see the most frequent types of the cognitive gain that was reported in the second form, the form after the debate. So as you may see, learning the new argument against own position is the most frequent one. And the second most frequent is the change in the degree of certainty, which is like very, very like promising. So I think you may say that basing on this, this debate somehow fosters better understanding the other side and like getting to know something that somehow undermines your initial position, which I think is like very, very positive thing. Okay, and some studies that we are currently running, the hypothesis that we are now testing. We have 4. The arguments in the Cracovian debate are better elaborated and less fallacious. And for that, we I think for 4 years now, we create transcripts of the debates. So we record debate, we make a transcript, and then we're still collecting this data. But for now, I think we have around 40 debates recorded and transcripted. And significant, like let's say 40% of these are competitive debates, like most commonly Oxford debates, because in Europe the most common debate I think is Oxford style debate. So we have these two types of debating. One is competitive, the other is cooperative. And we may create a corpora and we may annotate this corpora with some software for argument mining, like OVA, for example, created at the University of Dundee. And then we may compare the sophistication of the arguments. Let's say how much elaborated the arguments are, how many backings you have in the argument, and you may have a good quantitative analysis on that, and compare. So this is the hypothesis we have. The second one, I think, is the Cracovian debate fosters a better mutual understanding. So yeah, here you can, in the transcript of the Cracovian debate, you may analyze the quality of the paraphrase, and you may see how accurate these were. Also, we may compare to the Oxford debates and to see how many strawmans you had in the Oxford debates and how many strawmen, if any, you had in the Cracovian debates. That's another interesting direction. The third one, adversariality and polarization are lower in the Cracovian debate, and I think this one is really important for the world we live in, because we may see that not only the level of the public debate is decreasing or is already as low as it can be, but we also identify a huge polarization in the debate, in the public debate. So if we may teach students how to discuss without polarizing, that's something that I think we should all be interested in, because as you saw, the competitive debating is not really helping to depolarize. So we already have a lot of studies of the linguistic studies. Some of them was run and published by the Laboratory of the New Ethos in Warsaw by my colleagues. So we may use these the method of analyzing the level of polarization in order to use that in the corpora we create here. And the last hypothesis to test, and now I can say that we have just finished last week the experiment we had for the last entire semester. That was the experimental pilot study, and next year we plan to run it on the big sample of 500 students. But for now we only have pilot. So the hypothesis is that the Cracovian debate teaches participants to discuss better. So I may describe very briefly how it looks like. So basically we have created two groups, and one group was debating for the entire semester in the competitive formats, and the other was practicing Cracovian debate. And before the experiment started, we created a pre-test, but this test was not limited or to just assessing the arguments in the survey, because this is usually students are critical when they are doing some tests. So we have created a kind of a simulation of Twitter, X platform. And we asked them to see the the tweet or the reply to the tweet. So it's like a social media simulation, and they were asked to write 10 replies to 10 different tweets or some discussions in Twitter, and we will the competitive judges will analyze these responses. And obviously in the post-test, we also ask them to do something like this. And I think we have created around 70 tweets picked randomly in each test. And we will analyze them, the replies, by looking specifically if they were able to identify strawmen in these or some other logical fallacies, but the most common was strawman. And we expect that people from the Cracovian debate team will be more will identify more strawmans and will do less strawmen than the other group. So hopefully, we need to analyze data now because we just finished last week. But I hope we will be able to prove that hypothesis. And the next year, we already planned and schedule the big experiment on 500 people. So hopefully, the pilot will look good. Okay, 45 minutes, so just in time. Some references here, and and if you would like to give it a try, you may look for the instructions and materials at the website here on the Critical Thinking Research Lab control. Here is the link. So if you would like to do it, we would love to see and to hear your impressions. Okay, so any questions, comments, please?
Thank you so much. I'm just trying to stop recording.